My son slid the paper across my own kitchen table and said, "Just sign it, Dad. It's easier this way." I looked down and saw he'd already written today's date at the top. Before I even read a word of it, dear, I knew my two boys had already had this conversation without me. I'm Walter Combs. I'm 73 years old. I've got a bad hip, a good memory, and 320 acres of Kansas wheat ground that my father cleared with a mule before I was even born. For 48 years, that farm was my whole life. I married my wife Eleanor right there in the front room, under the window my father built with his own hands. We raised two boys on that land, Russell and Dale, and I taught them both to drive a combine before they could drive a truck. Russell's 51 now, silver at the temples, always in a collared shirt, even to check the mailbox. Dale's 48, quieter, the one who used to sit with me on the porch after supper just to talk. The tender thing I want you to remember, dear, is a cigar box, small, wooden, cracked at one corner, that sat on my father's dresser my whole childhood. He gave it to me the week before he died, and inside was a single folded document he told me never to lose. I didn't understand it fully back then. I understood it perfectly later. The warning sign I brushed off came 2 winters ago, when Russell started asking, real casual, whether I'd ever thought about simplifying things before I got too old to manage the paperwork myself. I laughed it off. I told him I'd been managing paperwork since before he learned to write his own name. I should have listened harder to how many times he brought it up after that. It started small, the way these things always do. Russell began driving out from the city every other Sunday, always with a folder of what he called just some options to think about. Dale would nod along beside him, not saying much, just present. Eleanor passed 3 years back, and I think the boys mistook my quiet grief for confusion. Or maybe they just found it convenient to think that. Then came the accountant, a young man named Chip Farrow, hired by Russell, who sat in my living room and explained very gently that a large farm like mine was a liability at my age. He used the word liability twice. My own home, called a liability, in my own front room. By spring, the folder had a name on it, Meadowbrook Land Partners. Russell said they were offering a fair price for the farm, house, and fields together, and that the money would let me move into a nice assisted place in town, close to my grandkids. He said it like a gift. It felt like an eviction with better lighting. I asked to see the offer in writing, and Russell got that tight look he used to get as a boy when he'd broken something and wanted to explain it before I noticed. The offer wasn't just for the farmhouse and the crop ground. It was for everything under it, too. Every mineral, every drop of oil, every cubic foot of gas beneath my father's 320 acres. I signed nothing that day, but I noticed something in that stack of papers that made my hands go still. There was a second document clipped behind the sale agreement, a survey map with markings I didn't recognize, dated from just 2 months earlier, done by a company neither of my sons had ever mentioned to me. Dear, that map changed everything, though I didn't yet know how. I didn't say anything at the table that Sunday. I folded the papers, thanked Russell for looking out for me, and told him I needed a few days to think, the way any tired old man might. Then I drove into town Monday morning and did something neither of my sons expected. I went to see Harlan Voss. Harlan was the land title clerk at the county courthouse for 31 years before he retired, and he and I had done business together since 1979, back when a man's word and a handshake still meant something in a land deal. He remembered me before I even said my name. What Harlan pulled from the old records room was the very same document that had sat in my father's cigar box my entire adult life. In 1968, my father split the deed on that land into 2 separate legal interests. The surface, the dirt you can plow and build a house on, went into the farm estate that later passed to me, and everyone assumed would pass whole to my sons. But the mineral rights underneath, everything beneath the surface, he deeded directly and only to me, Walter Combs, by name, recorded and sealed at the county courthouse. My sons had spent 4 months negotiating a sale on land whose most valuable part they never actually owned any claim to. I want to be honest with you, dear. Part of me wanted to march back into that kitchen and slam the deed down and watch my sons' faces fall. But 48 years of farming teaches you that the strongest move is rarely the loudest one. So instead, I called Harlan back 2 more times that week, and I called a lawyer named Priscilla Doan, who I'd known since she was a girl selling lemonade at the county fair and who now handled land disputes for half the county. We didn't rush. Priscilla and I spent 11 days quietly confirming the survey company Meadowbrook had hired had already identified gas reserves under my land, reserves worth several times what the surface sale offer even mentioned. My sons weren't just trying to move their aging father into a smaller room. They were trying to sign away, unknowingly or not, a fortune that legally was never theirs to sign away in the first place. I invited Russell and Dale to Sunday dinner. Same table, same chairs. I let Russell finish his whole pitch about Meadowbrook one more time, patient as ever, nodding along like a tired old man might. Then I set the original 1968 deed on the table next to his folder. "Read the second page," I said, quiet as I've ever said anything in my life. Russell read it twice. Dale read it once and went very pale. "This land was never fully yours to sell, boys," I said. "Not the part that matters most, anyway." Russell tried to argue it was a clerical confusion, that surely I misunderstood the document, that we should let his lawyer look at it. I told him his lawyer was welcome to call Priscilla Doan directly, and that she'd be glad to walk him through 1968 Kansas mineral law personally. Russell didn't call. What happened next, dear, wasn't some dramatic courtroom battle. It was quieter than that, and in its own way, harder. Meadowbrook Land Partners withdrew their offer within the month once their own lawyers reviewed the title and realized the surface deal they'd structured meant almost nothing without the mineral rights attached. Russell had told several people in town proudly that he was finally getting his father settled. Now half of them knew exactly why the sale had collapsed, and why. Dale came out to the farm alone about 3 weeks later. He sat on the porch steps, same spot he used to sit as a boy, and he didn't defend himself. "I should have asked you directly," he said, "instead of letting Russell do the talking for both of us. That was the door I left open, dear." Not forgiveness handed out for free, but an honest conversation. Finally, man to man. I leased the mineral rights myself the following spring, working directly with Priscilla, on my own terms, at my own pace. The farm stayed exactly where it belonged, in my name, on my land, under my roof. Russell still visits on holidays. It's careful between us now, polite, the way it gets when trust has to be rebuilt one Sunday at a time instead of assumed. Here's what I learned, dear, and I hope you'll carry it with you. Keep your important papers somewhere safe and make sure at least one person outside your family knows exactly where they are. Never sign anything the same day someone hands it to you, no matter how much they love you or how gently they say it's for your own good. And the people who raised you, taught you, built what you're now living inside of, deserve to be consulted, not managed. Has anyone in your own family ever tried to make a big decision for you without asking first? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. Being old doesn't mean being finished, dear.